We're now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Georgina. Good morning, everyone. I'm just sitting up here for the first 2 minutes just to introduce the session and to just update everybody on some changes that we've made to the executive and a couple of other structural matters before we get going. Anne-Marie Rosamond, who was up until last week the portfolio holder for housing, due to her health has had to step down from that role. She's going to remain a councillor though. I've said so in a number of places, but I do just want to thank her for everything that she has done in the housing role over the last nearly 3 years, and all of the support that she's had from officers and the work that she's done, which has been fantastic. Now, obviously, she was originally intended to chair this meeting from the very beginning when we thought about having this meeting sit. And while she was ill, I ended up being the sort of temporary housing portfolio holder on the side, and therefore the most appropriate person to chair this meeting. What we have done, recognising that the housing role is probably one of the most important things that the council does, we've sort of split it into two halves for councillors. There'll be a portfolio holder for developing new social housing, and another portfolio holder for maintaining and the stock that we have, and for working with our tenants and managing the procurement contract for the maintenance works. Councillor Nick Palmer is going to take on the role for developing new social housing. We're calling these co-portfolio holders for housing. And my colleague, Councillor Paul Rivers, who's sitting there in the corner, who's about to swap over from me, will be handling the maintenance of the stock side and, of course, chairing this meeting. So I'm going to say thank you very much to everybody for indulging me for the first two of these and for all the work you've done so far, and for officers to support, and also Terry for vice chairing. I'm now going to step down to hand over to Councillor Rivers, who will be chairing the Landlord Services Board going forward. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'll be perched at the back listening in intently as ever.
Well, thank you, everybody. Hey, nice to meet you. Goes to show, doesn't it, that when we replace one good lady, you need two men to do it. That's exactly what my wife said. Thank you. Firstly, nice to have Jill all the way in from North Devon. I think she's still here. So why don't we first, because there are a number of people on Zoom, just turn your microphone one by one and say who you are, so that people who are Zooming in can touch base. So I'm going to come off here, and then Terry, and then work our way around the room. Just say good morning.
Yes, good morning. My name is Terry Daubney, and I'm the chair of the Tenants panel.
The purpose of the call is it's Joseph's birthday tomorrow, and she'll be 72. Yeah, and I haven't sent a card, so I wondered if I could say happy birthday to her. Is she near you?
Gillian?
Yes, I'm here, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not 72 though, but you can get me a birthday card.
What?
We've got some background information coming in. So I'm Annalisa Howson. I'm the Housing Service Improvement Manager.
Hello, Joseph. How are you? I wanted to wish you happy.
Gillian, can you mute, please, Gillian?
Tomorrow.
Thanks, Gillian.
Hi, Danielle Slightholme, just a member of the Tenants panel.
I'm Jeanette Engerfield, the Tenant Involvement Officer for Waverley.
Jackie Keane, Councillor for Shottermill, Critchmere, Hasmere.
Councillor Paul Follows, Leader of the Council and Ward Member for Godalming Central and Oxford.
Hi, I'm Peter Vickers, Head of Finance and Property. I have to think about that sometimes.
I'm Andrew Smith. I'm Head of Housing Delivery and Communities. Work very closely with Hugh Wagstaff and Annalisa across the whole of the HRA work.
Thanks, everybody. Georgina, I'm sorry if I made a problem there for you.
It's fine, don't worry.
Right. Okay. So if we move then to our agenda, item 1 on our agenda is apologies for absence. Georgina, do we have any?
I haven't received any.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I think I saw an email from Councillor Deere saying he'd apologise for not being here, Chairman. So we should record that.
Yeah, I saw that too. Okay, excellent. Item 2 then, minutes of the previous meeting. Now, we're asked to approve the meeting, minutes of the meeting. Just like to run through a few things with you on this. In the minutes, which are entitled notes, there's 1 or 2 items that look like requiring action or resolution in this. So if you can just turn to page 3 of your agenda papers for the last minutes, the last meeting's minutes. I just wanted to check if we move to paragraph 11. Does that make sense? Is everybody there? Which is headed Affordable Homes Delivery Strategy Consultation. First paragraph says, Alice Lean and Esther Lyons, Housing Strategy and Enabling Managers, presented to the board on draft Affordable Homes Delivery Strategy, which would be going out to consultation at the end of January. Can I have a comment on that? Has it gone out? Is it going out?
I can confirm that the consultation launched yesterday on the 27th. So it's available online. Direct approaches have been made to various charities and stakeholders. So yes, please have a read and make some comments.
Lovely. Okay, thanks. Then if we turn over to number 12, at the end, last paragraph of number 12, which is on page 5, board members were asked to feedback any other comments to officers, and a draft consultation response incorporating comments put forward would be circulated to board members for final comments. Officers, have we got a comment on that?
Yes, I'm happy to take that. I've had further comments from Terry Daubney, and we've arranged we're having a focus group with tenants at the beginning of February, and the consultation responses are not due to be submitted till the 3rd of March. So I expect the documentation will be shared with you mid to end of February.
Thanks very much. And then at the bottom of actual page 5 under number 13, there is a bold statement that says agreed that the LSAB would have the opportunity to meet with the new contractor and with TfL who carry out satisfaction surveys at an appropriate point in the mobilisation of the new contract. Is that under control?
Yes, I've agreed with Heather Rigg, the property services manager, that TfL will come to this committee on the 31st of March, and the responsive repairs and voids contractor will come on the 28th of February. Got those dates confirmed.
Thanks very much. And lastly, from my point of view, on 14 work programme, Terry Daubney asked for a report back on the senior living consultation, as a number of issues had been raised with the tenants panel. Terry, have you got that, or?
Yes, I think we've agreed that that's going to be brought forward to the next 28th, isn't it?
Right. Well, wouldn't it be nice just to go to any other business now? But before that, so can I say, may I ask the meeting if they are happy to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Can you just say, good, okay, thanks very much. Item 3 then, declarations of interest. Georgina?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. And item 4, service plans 2022 to 2025. Who's going to take us through this one? Oh, thank you. Over to you.
Georgina, were you able to pick up the presentation to share?
I haven't been given the presentations. I'm really sorry.
Okay, it's in the committee folder.
Okay, I'm not in Citrix at the moment.
Okay, all right, I shall do it without then, that's fine, no problem. So really wanted to give you an overview of the service plan. So every year, each service within the council has an annual service plan that sets out what they want to achieve in the coming year. Over the last few years, we've recognised that not everything is done in a year, so they're rolling programmes and they're based for 3 years. So when reviewing our service plan, you'll probably notice that in the quarterly performance reports, you get a small update on how we're progressing against the service plan actions. And last autumn, we reviewed the current service plan and did a bit of horizon scanning about what issues were going to come up in the future. So we took feedback from the tenants panel. I've been having ongoing discussions with them at the partnership meeting about issues arising. We looked at tenants' feedback we'd had. As you're aware, we've had the STAR survey, so that was really useful information to inform what we needed to do in the future. We looked at some of the compliments and complaints we'd received. And also this was all set within the context of the Charter for Social Housing Residents, the white paper that was released last year. So we've followed the same themes for the service plan, and I think you've all got a copy of the full draft service plan. So the first thing we're looking at is to make sure that the service is financially robust, and we make sure we've got at least £2 million in reserve to deal with any natural disasters, unforeseen consequences of just life, really. So there's 3 actions to make sure that we're financially robust. We're going to be reviewing the HRA business plan, having strategic review in the new year. And also, as you're aware, the asset management strategy has been in development, and that's due to be presented to this committee in March. The second theme we have is about meeting the needs for our residents and tenants. So we really want to focus on communications. We've just received the consultation feedback from the Senior Living Scheme, which Terry said you'll be getting at the next meeting. We really want to embed our tenant involvement strategy and make sure there's lots of opportunities for people to work with us and give us feedback so we can make sure that our services are tailoring people's needs. The third theme is for us to be professional and put residents at the heart of what we do. We've got a training programme. We want to make sure that we've got a good retention of staff and make sure that we've got the capacity within the team to deal with all the things that are arising. And working with the Chartered Institute of Housing, we're also looking at the professional attributes that a social housing officer should have. And we're working with people to ensure they've got ongoing learning and development and professionalism. The fourth theme for the service plan is to be a recognised partner. We can't do what we do on our own. We need to work with other organisations and statutory agencies to improve lives. So we'll continue to work with those agencies and seek opportunities to promote any initiatives that are going to help the wider population. And fifthly, we want to make sure that our customer experience is good for our residents. So we'll continue to monitor satisfaction and look at our compliance. We need to predominantly make sure that everybody's safe in their home, but then also their interactions with us are positive and we based on mutual respect and trust. And then the sixth element, which is not in the housing operations service plan, but is in the housing delivery and community service plan, is about delivering new homes and maximising new homes. And you may have seen in the latest edition of our Homes and People newsletter our commitment this year to improving responsive repairs. We've got a new contractor starting in April. That's going to be a real focus for the housing service, and I believe this board, and also to really focus on communications and making sure that we're working well with our residents. We really want to make a difference. So in the words of our tenant involvement strategy, let's get buzzing and make things happen. You know, we are a team, we can be a team, we want to be proud, we want to be focused, be involved, be inquisitive, and let's just make a difference. And together we can improve people's homes and lives.
Thanks, Annalisa. Thanks very much. Do I have any speakers on this? Great. That's lovely. Okay, well, thank you, Annalisa. Thank you for that. Now, I don't think there's anything that we need to do explicitly other than to note that, which is a good thing. Okay, right. So that was item 4. Item 5, and I know you've been waiting for this one. Well, thank you, people in the room, for telling me that I'm not doing my job. Where's the recommendation? Oh, yeah, I've got it. Yeah, sorry. I was not seeing that. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much. Okay, so on item 4, service plans, what we are to agree is, and I'll read it out, to consider the service plans for 2022 to 2025. A, agree any observations to be passed to the executive. B, confirm the reporting cycle to the LSAB. And C, agree future LSAB agenda items. Okay, now we'll take those all together. Are we happy to be part of do that? That's very kind of you. Thank you. And thank you for being kind to your chairman here. I need as much help as I can possibly get. Right. Okay, item 5 then.
I'm sorry, could I just interrupt for
yeah,
a
please.
second? Yeah. So just to say that there is the opportunity, I gave my presentation and then stopped speaking. What I should have said was, if you'd like to talk any further about any of the themes or the outcomes, if there's something that's of particular interest to you, we could have a conversation now, or we could put it onto the work plan for the future to come back with a different report. And also to get your view that if you think those themes are the correct themes for the housing service to deliver on, have we missed something? Is there anything else you would like to add or alter? And just to say the reporting cycle, I'm suggesting you'll get the quarterly reports through the performance report, but also to come back to this group in 6 months' time and give a more detailed update of what's been happening with all the service plan actions.
Okay, thanks. Jackie?
Thank you.
And Danielle?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, reading this, it all reads really well. And I'm really pleased that we've got, you know, somebody coming in to do the repairs, that people are beginning to, you know, feel comfortable with Ian Williams' team. And I've had that feedback from tenants. So that's a really good thing. And I don't know whether Terry's had that from his tenants, but they are pleased. And it's good to see that Waverley's actually really interacting with their tenants, because I think in the past that's been something that's been sadly lacking. And I think that's picking up well now. So that's good to see as well.
Thanks, Jackie. Danielle?
Hi, I was pleased to see a lot of the items on the outcome 2. Service meets the needs of the tenants and their families. The second one I thought was important, working with the tenants to manage financial things, and also the senior living tenants. However, there's no extra budget. So how does that go about if you do find a need? Do you have the money to put in there?
Sorry, Annalisa?
I'm happy to, but did Hugh want to comment?
So Chair, should we pick up the budget when we on the next item, and we can actually, and that's one of the kind of things I wanted to discuss when we discuss the budget, is how it relates to the service plan, But just to reassure you, in terms of there is a hardship fund within the budget, in particular to Daniela's question, if that, I think that's what she was asking for.
And also, how about if you discover some additional needs in the senior living places? If there's no additional budget, how will you actually manage to deliver the service plan?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by need, but we have got an extra, we've got £750,000 in there. And there's a line, it is fire safety work. And that's where we think the risk is within the schemes. When we do the fire risk assessments, there isn't a program of work for those monies. So there is that money to be spent. And our initial thoughts is on fire safety works. If there are other needs within the scheme, we could via money from that budget, or we could go back to the council and ask for additional money. So there is, I think, substantial money there that we can spend on the senior living schemes, and also in the development programme. Again, there's money there to build some new flats within one of the schemes, and so we are investing. And to give you reassurance, there's quite a lot of money going into the senior living schemes within the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks you. Is that okay, Danielle? Right. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and just to get also reassurance from my side of the fence, Danielle, if something like that happens and there's a big need established, a report comes to the executive from the housing officers, and we have to determine whether we want to move money from something else to deal with it. So if it's a serious issue like that, generally speaking, we will make sure it's dealt with. Okay. So.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So committee, are we all done with item 4? I can move on to item 5, housing revenue account business plan, revenue budget and capital programme. And Hugh, I hope you're going to take us through that.
So I'll kick this off, and then Peter may want to come in and others may want to come in. It's just to say, Chair, 2 meetings ago, Peter gave a very interesting and in-depth analysis of the housing accounts and the challenges in terms of financial side of the budget. So it's not envisaged today to go through the figures in details, because, as I say, we spent quite a bit of time 2 meetings ago looking at the figures. And I think now is the time to focus on delivery, what we're going to use the money within the budget that we're asking for, and that people are comfortable that we are asking for that money and that we can deliver. So I just want to make some general comments and then comment on some of the individual recommendations. I mean, Chair, I feel this is a very exciting but a challenging budget in terms of delivery. The teams will have to work hard, will have to innovate to actually deliver what's within the budget. What the budget does, it looks to resolve the challenges the housing services faces now, but it's also a budget that looks to the long term. As I say, at the presentation that Peter gave, we really looked at this budget is around a 30-year business plan. So this is not just about next year. It's not even about the year after. This is a budget that actually looks to the future for our children and our children's children. So this is what the kind of thing that we're looking for. Peter at the last meeting talked about how we're self-financing, i.e. we had to take a mortgage out of £189 million paid to the government, so we no longer had to pay them monies every year from the rent. And as the budget shows, the interest and we're in a period where we're paying the interest and the principal. So a huge chunk of the money of rent is going off to pay that mortgage we had to take out to free ourselves from the government's financing system. But as the report mentions, the business plan was designed to mitigate against moderate shocks. And we've had those moderate shocks. We talked last time about the 4 years of rent reduction, and it's really hit the business plan, because not only did the rents reduce, but within the business plan, we were assuming rent rises above inflation, which is what the government promised. Of course, COVID has hit us as a service. It has meant lost income, i.e. rent. We weren't able to let properties as quickly as possible because of the COVID. So And the other thing is, because we provided other services, we did a lot of work around vulnerable people. It lost momentum on actually improving our core services going forward. We have had contractual issues, disagreements with our contractors. This is obviously has meant costs, but there's also the hidden cost. Because staff are focused on that, they've not focused on actually improving the services and delivering efficiencies that we should be doing. The report also tackles and supports the corporate agenda of the net zero, the decarbonisation agenda. We've got huge investment within this next year's budget. We've got a pilot up on Oxford Ridge to retrofit 7 homes, and we've got the stuff that we've been doing for quite a few years now: insulation, this fabric first approach, insulation, new windows, etc. There is a huge challenge going forward. We've got 800 properties that were pre-war, Second World War, pre-1945. They're going to be our challenge in terms of reaching the council's target of net zero. The other challenge is the building standards. There's new building standards. There's new best practice. And that's what we've been hit this year, i.e. we've had to ask for additional monies to do works at one of the senior schemes. We're anticipating that, as I mentioned before the start, that we may continue to have to respond to this new standards, the new best practice within our senior living schemes. And that's why we've got a budget there for 3 years running for £750,000 to actually do that work. But it's to emphasise, there isn't any actual work that's been identified currently. It's an anticipation, and hopefully it won't be needed. The work that's identified is through our fire risk assessments, which we've been doing for many years. As I say, because standards have changed, this now is identified new types of work. So what I'm asking is for members of the board, when they discuss this budget and confirm the budget, that they do take into account the issues that I've raised. As Annalisa mentions, the report also reflects what's in the service plan. We recognise there is a need for a strategic review of the business plan, and where officers are meeting next week, and this board needs to be involved in that review. The review is required for all the different things I've mentioned, but it's basically the changing environment. We'll move to the couple of the specific recommendations. The first one is the rent rise, and we did discuss that at the last time that we were in preparation for this report. So the report puts forward the argument that the business plan requires the rent rise. It recognises it will be a challenge to our residents. It then argues that last year's rent rise was managed by our residents if we measure our rent collection performance. But we recognise that also that individual tenants may fall in hardship, and for that we do have a hardship fund within the budget, which people will be able to access. It's just worth mentioning something that we've currently got a hardship fund. It's called the Household Fund. I think that's the full title, which is actually this is actually government money. We publicised it in the Homes and People, and we're actually sending a letter out to all our tenants asking if they're in hardship, if they want to apply to that fund. The other thing we're doing is the rents team, who have got records of everyone that's gone on to universal credit during the COVID period, the last 2 years, are proactively looking to actually find people who they feel may have been in hardship over the last year or so. So we're actually actively going out and trying to find people who may have hardship. So we're publicising the scheme, and we're proactively looking for people. As I mentioned, the rent increase is needed to actually deliver the 30-year plan. As we've talked about in quite detail at the last meeting, if the rent rises need to be seen of their cumulative effect over the years and the income that it does bring in. But of course, the 4.1% increase will give us money to actually deliver services that are required now. The report mentions that the 4.1% equates to £1.61 per week. As I say, we had discussed that at the meetings before, but I think we'll welcome any last comments around this before it goes off to the full council, to ensure that we've got the board's buy-in to the rent increase, and what we as officers need to do to reassure you that we deliver the services. So really my concluding point, Chair, is the budget and recommendations are, to repeat what I've said, are to meet the challenges we are facing now, and we do face some quite big challenges, but also it's about the challenges in the future, and this is what this budget is doing, is actually looking to the future as well. So I would really welcome any comments, suggestions, any questions before this now moves on to the council to be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Hugh. Okay, well, item 2 is very clearly set out in this paper what the recommendations are, and before I open it to the floor, we are to recommend that this board make comments to the executive on the proposed recommendations, and the reason for that is to provide the resources to fund Waverley Borough Council's landlord services management operations, maintenance programme, and building new affordable homes. So it's not a light thing to do, but I recognise that we are not, or I'm speaking myself then, perhaps accountants or auditors or whatever, but picking up on Hugh's point, any comments from this? I understand that you've already seen or had a discussion on this at the last meeting, but do we have any comments on these recommendations before I move to the recommendation? Danielle?
Hi, it was the hardship fund. Will it be ongoing? I mean, how long is this going to be?
Paul, would you?
Apologies, that fund, the purpose of it is so it can be added to the base budget so that it will be renewed every year. Because I think realistically cost of living is going up for everybody, and it will continue to go up, particularly energy costs. And irrelevant of COVID and other things, I think this needs to be something that we have access to for multiple years, not just one-off. So it will be part of the base budget going forward. And
what will be the requirements? It's all very well to say, I don't know, hardship funds. I mean, is it quite a stringent fund to access, or?
Right. So this is, I don't want to make it to be a flippant thing, but officers I know will be realistic in assessing that hardship. So because it's controlled by Waverley Borough Council and is not set by the Department of Work and Pensions or whatever they're called these days, it will be what our officers consider to be hardship rather than a strict checklist from government on the subject. So it will be relatively flexible.
Of course, it's been in the news so much at the moment with this cost of living increase, and then Jack Monroe has been the big thing on everything with how it's the worst off that are having the biggest increases. And so it's that group, of course, that are going to, like us all, we have finding everything's more expensive, but it seems to be that group that will be struggling the most that this is going to hit. So I just want to make sure that they're going to be covered.
If I may, Chair, I actually met Jack Monroe. She's lovely. And when we were talking about food banks during the pandemic, and yeah, you're absolutely right. And every single thing that we have that hits this, whether it be rent, council tax rises, whether it be national insurance rises from the government generally, and energy costs and food costs, all of that hits the people who are already the worst off in society. That is explicitly why we've put this pot in, because on the one hand, we definitely need to build more houses, and we definitely need to make them more affordable for people who actually live in the area, particularly people who I mean, generally speaking, you're not going to be on a huge salary if you need to do this anyway. So we need to build more houses and we need to make them more affordable. But on the other hand, we can't raise the rents too high. So we have to have a little bit of a buffer to make sure we can help those who are pushed into some kind of difficulty by this. And that's what this is for. We have an equivalent pot, by the way, in the council tax side as a more general thing. So there are different levels of support where we're hopefully trying to recognise this issue.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because I would be fearful if this was just a placatory thing to get the rise through and then it sort of disappeared in the future. So I'm happy to hear that it's going to be ongoing
I
and
can't promise,
accessible.
I mean, I can't promise that a future administration won't get rid of it. I can promise that I won't.
All you can do.
Okay, thank you. I've got Jackie next, but Annalisa, did you want to say something on specifically on Danielle's point?
Yes, yeah, just to say with Danielle, it would be good to, we will be working with the tenants panel while we're working through any kind of eligibility criteria and checks. And really for me, one of the main things I want to do is make sure that this isn't stigmatized or seen in a negative way. And so it was really interesting to hear how Hugh's rent team are already trying to implement the new housing support fund that's from the government, as well as telling people it's there and waiting for people to come to us. We're going to them, and I think we need to be really proactive in knowing our tenants, knowing their needs, identifying those issues. And fingers crossed there is a change about the national insurance, who knows? But we need to be proactive to make sure we're putting that hardship fund in the right pockets.
And apologies, Chair, one of the issues that we saw with food banks in particular was that people had waited till they were in really serious hardship. They'd blown through all their savings. They were literally at the last gasp of any money they had before they came for any help. Whereas actually, partly because they were so surprised they were in the situation and embarrassed to come forward about it. So I'm really glad to hear that we're proactively getting involved too, because actually a lot of that could have been dealt with in advance if people knew about it and if people were coming forward. So that's great, Annalisa. Thank you.
So, Chair, can I also build on Annalisa's point?
Yes, please, Hugh.
Yes, so a couple of things is the tenants panel can actually, perhaps we consult with them on the criteria in terms of giving out this fund. The tenants panel already meet with the rents team on a regular basis in terms of the communication with the residents in terms of rent arrears and give advice on that area. And at those meetings, perhaps, Terry, that this can be picked up how this fund is being spent. So quickly we can pick up if what Danielle is saying, her fears are that we make sure that that is not happening, that the fund is being used, and we are being proactive to use it. As I said, there are other funds available as well, which we will also firstly channel people to in terms of their legal rights to funds and to welfare benefits. So I think, and then the next point I wanted just to make is, yes, I think we do need to use our knowledge. I think a couple of reasons why we are so good at our rent collection is that the rent officers do know the tenants and they do act promptly. And we do, as soon as someone goes in arrears, we are making contact with those people. And as Paul says, that's then we can actually assess and actually help them at that stage rather than when the arrears get too high. So that is, as I said, the performance of the team is excellent, and that's partly because we're prompt. It's partly that we do refer people to or sign people to where they can get their benefits and make sure they have the maximum benefits. So if Terry's okay with that, at those regular meetings with the rents team, the tenants panel can pick that up. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. Jackie, can you? Jackie's been waiting for hours for this.
No, carry on.
Jackie, why don't you carry on, or do you want Terry to pick up on that point? Go ahead, Terry.
Yes, thank you, Hugh. Yes, it definitely be put on our agenda as a tenants panel. Just a couple of things really that I wanted to bring to is when we're talking about the band of people that are now struggling and are difficult, that band is now going to increase with everybody else, with everything else increasing. And the other issue is that you mentioned about performance and delivering the service. The last 2 years have been difficult for everybody, and that's caused an effect on how the service has been provided. So we're now asking tenants to pay a lot more money, and we need to make sure that actually that service is now going to improve. Because I think that's the worst thing that will happen if we're sitting here this time next year. We've all paid extra money and the service hasn't improved. So we need to work together on that one, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Now, Jackie, at long last, my apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. That's all right. Just really a couple of things. I mean, we all know that people are very reticent about coming forward to admit that they have problems, you know, with their income and paying their bills. But I think there's another group of people that sadly do get overlooked, and it's not anybody's fault really, but those are the people that struggle with money management. And you know, I have had a tenant that I worked with for quite a long while, who absolutely hopeless with managing money, got into trouble with goodness knows what, you know, with her rent and everything, but doesn't like to admit it until they actually are in such dire trouble that they don't know what to do, and then the anxiety kicks in and goodness knows what else. So that, you know, I think we have to stress upon people that it's not going to be a hard job to, you know, to apply to this fund. It's not going to be rigorous, because I think that's what frightens people off, the fact that they've got maybe, you know, a lot of information to do and they don't understand it and things like that. So that's my only concern with people applying, to get across to them that it's not going to be horrible or hard, and there's lots of people there to help them through it. And I think that's quite important.
Care and concern and consideration. Well, 3 C's, isn't it? Thanks, Jackie. Any more speakers on this?
Yes, Chair, it's Hugh again. Just to go back to Councillor Keane's point, and that's why the tenant panel has got involved with the rents team, is to ensure that we have that softer side. I think, and Terry can say more about this, but I think the tenants panel felt so sometimes we were a bit harsh in terms of when we were contacting people about their rent arrears, and that's where that relationship with the tenants panel and the rents team developed, is to actually, for us to be more compassionate, more caring, because we are, but it was just how the written letters were being interpreted and seen by some tenants. And so that is, you know, the excellent work the tenants panel are doing in terms of actually giving us that sense check on how we communicate with tenants particularly in arrears, and who are anxious, the kind of how Councillor Keane described it, anxious, concerned, etc., don't want to face up to bureaucracy. And also I just do see that this scheme, this hardship fund scheme, won't be bureaucratic. There's got, of course, got to be some kind of form fill-in, but we can look to use technology to make that easy. People could just claim it through by talking through on the phone, and the form gets filled in automatically. So it isn't going to be a big bureaucratic thing. And as long as we assure internal audit that we've got some checks and balances that are required, because it is public money, we will make it as easy as possible. But as I say, Terry may want to say a bit more about his work that he has been doing with the rents team, just to give us that more compassionate kind of feel, especially on those lower arrears. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Hugh. Terry?
Yes, just to say that we've worked quite closely with the tenant team, the rent team. Letters that were going out that were sometimes perceived as quite threatening, that their home was at risk if they didn't catch up with their back payment, and probably that a gentler letter first is much better, and that's been repeated in other departments within the service that we provide, and we're trying to address that, get people to be try us to be a little bit more sympathetic. The other thing that I'm thinking about is the hardship grant is what criteria you're going to set. I know that many grants, if you start to ask for them, they want to know if you've got a car, they want to know if you've got a telephone, do you smoke? And if we do all that, that's where people will stop asking, because they don't want to give up their car, they don't want to give up their television. Television is important to a lot of people. And do they smoke? We've all got views on that, but be very careful we're not too restrictive in what questions we're asking, and maybe even turn them down because things that we don't believe is what they should be spending their money on.
Thanks, Terry.
Chair, can I come back on that? So Chair, Paul has given us, that the high level steer, and as I say, I don't think it will be interrogating into that depth of their need. We reckon, it will be some basic things. Why are they becoming hardship? And then to actually understand that, for me, that it will be the driver. We won't judge them about their lifestyles, etc. It's about getting over that initial hardship. It's not a long-term thing. It's about getting them over that hardship for them then to sort themselves out, and then perhaps they would need to go to seek further help, and perhaps someone else to challenge them on the issues that Terry mentioned. But that's not the purpose of this fund, is to get people to stop smoking. Although it could be a good idea. Chair, would it be all right to go back to Daniela? She feels reassured that about the fund, and that we are going to be using it in a positive, proactive way.
Yeah. Before we do that, Danielle, I've got Peter. Yeah, please. You've been waiting for even more hours than Jackie was.
Very patient. So just key things. Points have been covered, but the report does commit us to reviewing this hardship fund during the year. So it's not just a one-off splash and that's it. It's an active thing. We don't know if 30,000 is enough. We just don't have a clue. In honesty, until we start to look into what materializes through. It's not so much the COVID, it's more the cost of living issues that are coming through at the moment. In terms of hardship and managing a fund of this nature, the council's got a long history of doing this. We have council tax section 13A, as we call it, a technical name for it in council tax speak, where people apply for hardship or can apply for hardship, and we have a criteria. As we're saying, we do ask the basics around people's finances, but we're not doing it from a judgmental point of view. We just need to understand when we're engaging, which is, the very basics. It's public money. We need to understand some of these scenarios and how they are managing financially, and really it all comes down to engagement. There has to be an engagement for us to be able to work with people. The council's not in the business of making anybody homeless. It's not in our interest to do that, publicly or financially to do that. So it isn't a bureaucratic thing to do. It's an engagement thing that we have to do. It's a very human thing to do, to look to when people are getting into difficulties, to have the conversations with the rent team and the housing colleagues to see where the help can be given. And that's what this fund is doing. It's just putting an additional pot of money in place on top of all the other pots that are available at the moment. There's numerous ways of assisting already within the council. So this is just focusing. The 30,000 is actually focusing around people that aren't able to access sufficient benefit to cover their rents, support for external support to cover their rents. Those are just kind of on the margin of that, where they are struggling, and that's people just on the cusp of universal credit, for instance, where they're in and out during the year. Nothing's that black and white, and it's just about identifying that the fact that does exist, and we do need to help that group of people as well. So it's not bureaucratic. It's just about engagement for us to get there.
Thanks very much. Danielle, Hugh wanted you to, sorry, Annalisa, I think was it?
Yes.
Hugh,
excellent.
sorry, Hugh. Who did you want to follow up? I should have written it down. Was it?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Danielle, sorry, thank you.
yeah, no, that sounds good.
Okay, thank you very
Could
much.
I bring up something else? I don't know, it may be more relevant next meeting, but just whilst it's on these papers, on page 47, it has a list of different specific rent increases, and it mentions the senior living schemes and the cost per session of the community rooms for the residents. I don't know, probably not, but are you able to say off the top of your head what the income for this is? Is there much, do they rent out their, basically, I don't know if it, should these community rooms be rented out to the residents? Because they probably don't rent them out. And in which case, if there's no income, why charge for them and not let them use them for free?
So this is not a charge to tenants. So the tenants can use them, and they do use them. This is for outside agencies to use them, and it's actually sort of more of a community activities. For example, Pilates and that kind of thing. For the last 2 years, we haven't been, because of the COVID, have not been renting out the rooms. So, and then in some of those instances, when we have let out the rooms, they the tenants have joined the club.
It does say residents, and there's 2 lines of residents. Line and a non-residents
I've
line.
visited one of the schemes, and they definitely said, I mean, this may be post-COVID, but they definitely, I mean, Gillian was there as well.
Oh, are you talking about the guest rooms?
No, the community rooms, and the residents themselves have told me that they have to pay to use the community rooms, which I thought was a bit.
Well, I'm not aware of that. I need to look into that. No, this is about external agencies, other kind of groups external groups using it. We wouldn't charge residents, but I'll pick that up. I've not ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm assuming we're talking about on page 47, the third detailed item. Paul?
Yeah, sorry. Could I ask either Peter or Hugh to clarify that, because there is in the budget line it does make 2 distinct references, residents and non-residents. So I can see why Danielle would think that, because currently so do I.
Just comment, and it's me just talking from what I'm seeing here. It depends on the purpose of renting the room out. I'm not sure why we're differentiating between a resident and non-resident. If somebody's wishing to hire the room out to run a session around, I don't know, like you say Pilates or something, and they are charging for that, as in it is their business that they are running in there effectively, then it is reasonable for the council to recover money from those sessions, because that is money that goes into the pot to assist in running the housing. So it's additional to the rent stream. Otherwise, the tenants are subsidising, all of the tenants are subsidising that activity. And we don't subsidise private activity with public money. I don't know why they're renting out, but I'm just making that assumption.
Yes, so I'm just thinking,
Sorry,
so if I
hang
was
on,
going to.
Hold on, can we just go through the chair on this? I mean, are we basically asking for these 2 items to be reviewed and brought back to this committee, or can we sort it out here? Paul?
My suggestion would be, based on what Peter said, is to possibly rephrase it into commercial and non-commercial so that we don't get confused, because I would infer the same thing as Danielle there. So we could just amend those line items names so that they're clearer. That would deal with it.
That's just confused me even more. I mean,
So,
commercial.
At the moment, the principal distinction doesn't seem to be between a resident or a non-resident. It seems to be anybody using it for a commercial purpose would incur a charge, whether it be a private entity or a resident that happened to be running a private business that they were charging for. So the distinction is not resident, non-resident, but commercial, non-commercial.
Okay. Danielle, you happy with that?
So to clarify, if I were to want to go there and run a Pilates course for free, that would not be a chargeable one.
Peter,
Not at the moment, as it stands. If you're wanting to run a,
I don't want to run a, just to be clear.
hypothetically, just for example, if you're wanting to use the room to run a group, as this says, there's a charge. Now, the distinction between resident, non-resident, I don't know. I haven't.
Peter, I think, can we just have one line and just community rooms commercial, because I cannot recall us why would we charge tenants if they want to do an activity. We would just allow them to use that room because they pay the service charge. So I've never noticed that before. I think to simplifies it, we just have one line for we could either still call it non-resident or just commercial, that line.
Okay, so Annalisa?
Yeah, I think I just wanted maybe to maybe helpfully give a bit more of a distinction. So the residents pay for the communal lounge and they can use it free of charge. And because senior living homes are a little bit smaller than other homes, residents can use the lounge as an extension of their home. So if they were having a birthday party and family members can use the lounge, they'd need to negotiate and make sure that there wasn't 4 people wanting a party in the lounge at the same time. But the distinction is when the supporting people money was reduced and we wanted to put senior living schemes back into the heart of the community and invite people in to do different activities. If I'm coming in to do life drawing or a wine club or a book club that it's commercial, then we will be charging them for the room. Does that help?
I'm not sure it's helping me actually, but I wonder if we need to take this offline and bring this back specifically as a non-meeting item. Paul?
I think this particular committee is empowered through executive authority to request the head of finance to just make that change to the line item to make that distinction. I think that's all you need to do in this case, if you're happy with that, Peter.
Yep. Is that okay, Peter? Okay. So what are we asking Peter to do? Can we have a summary? Jackie?
Well, as Annalise has just explained it, I mean, to me, it's perfectly understandable that we're charging outside bodies to come in and use the lounge, but we're not charging the residents to use it, which is standard in most residential places. So I don't think we need to take it offline and do it again.
Okay, that's fine.
It's perfectly sensible.
You're suggesting that we remove the third line in here, which says community rooms residents. Is that
yes? And the last line will read community rooms commercial.
Okay. Are we all happy with that? Wow, it's a decision. That's really good. Right. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, again, a little problem for this this will be old chairman here. The recommendation, I presume we've talked this one out, so I can move to the recommendation now. In the agenda, item 5, there are 6 items in the recommendation, but in our working papers, in the actual paper itself, there are 9. So I think there are 3 extra ones in the working paper. Can we just check that we're not adding in or missing out?
I think that within the report, you've got the recommendations that are going to go to executive. So you get a full view of what the executive and council are looking to approve.
Right.
And you as a board, the agenda recommendations are probably the most succinct ones.
So you're hoping that I would understand that. Okay. So in terms of recommendation, do we just basically put them all together and pick up on the first line? It's recommended that the Landlord Services Advisory Board make comments to the executive on the proposed recommendations. Is that our recommendation?
Well, I believe you've made a comment about the community rooms, and that's
yes.
An amendment you want to make. You may wish to share some of the comments you've had about how the hardship fund could be used.
So I think what will happen is a summary of the discussion now will be made and will be added to the executive report.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to capture so that's what Democratic Services would do, a summary of what we've discussed, and that will be added to the report.
Okay, Hugh. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, can I just request specifically that the point Danielle made about the criteria and how we establish it? I think the idea that we worked on with the tenants panel is something that we should do for sure. So that can be very clearly highlighted, Georgina, in the notes for the executive. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Georgina, are you okay with that?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. I know you're long suffering there, but we're doing our best to get the right result here. Thank you. Okay, are we done with that one? Fine. So the last item then for us to deal with is this thing called a work program. That's not the sort of program that I'd normally tune to, but any comments on the work program as it is set out on pages 55 to 68? I guess what we would be looking for is anything in here that needs to be amended. The one problem I had really is working out the month. I mean the year. I presume that on the first page, page 55, that's November last year. Right, okay. Thank you. Paul?
Just a quick query really for probably Annalisa, as you'll probably get roped into this most. The ONS group wanted to do a joint working group regarding what they initially said as the housing revenue account and have subsequently articulated as housing in their rather generally in a subsequent communication. Can we just double check that when they established this working group that its terms of reference not horrendously clash with this one? Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes, absolutely. This board has been set up, it's got very clear terms of reference, and we all know why we're here, to make sure that we've got tenants involved in the governance of the activities we do. And so it would be interesting to see, I believe Mark Mills, the scrutiny officer, will be working with the overviewing scrutiny members to work up a terms of reference, and I will engage with him.
Okay. Now, one item on here against 10th of January, which says, just picking up on the affordable homes delivery strategy, the outcome, Councillor Keane and Terry to meet with Alice Lean and Esther Lyons, housing strategy and enabling managers, to review consultation documentation and feedback on behalf of the board. 8th of February. Right. Okay. All right. Does not make any sense to me. So what's the decision date is April 2022 for that item. Sorry to be a bit of a, but February is the delivery. Sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Yes, we're due to meet with officers on the 8th of February.
Okay. All right, to progress it. Got it. Okay. Any other questions on here? Paul?
Do we have a rough idea when you'd like the contractors rep to come in, just so I could, because I think if we've got a rough idea when you'd like them to come in, we should probably put a line in this for that.
Yep, I've got a date for that. So we've got the contractors who are doing the responsive repairs feedback survey are coming on the 31st of March, and the responsive repairs and voids contractor is coming in at the end of April, the April meeting.
Okay.
Chair, can I just clarify something? It's just something in Councillor Deer's email. So we've got now dates for the rest of the year. We're not having a meeting in December or August. So there are more meetings than Councillor Deer thought we'll be having. Are people okay with that? Because the logic was, and I think this came from Councillor Osmond, that really the board should have really about no more than 3-4 items, so there can be a thorough discussion about them and just not rush through. This is not a committee just to rubber stamp things. I think that was the key thing. And so it is probably a little bit more commitment than perhaps people start. I just wanted to clarify that than people started, but they are happy with that. And then we can probably note that the committee recognises that it's probably going to meet this year 10 times this year. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Hugh. So looking at the work programme for today, which is on page 58, there is an item here that says verbal progress update on asset management strategy, included in budget and service plan reports. That doesn't mean an awful lot to me. Sorry.
Yep. That's fine. So the discussion, I expected the discussion to for the budget and the service plan to talk about asset management strategy. I did allude to the fact that it will be coming to the board in March. Okay. This has been, for some members, a long awaited document. The asset management strategy sets out how we're going to manage our homes into the future to make sure they're safe, they're warm, and now with the climate emergency and the council's commitment, we need to explore how we can make our homes greener and more efficient and fundamentally a good place to live. So the asset management strategy will be coming to this group, this board in March. Perfect.
Thank you very much. Any more comments? Sorry, go ahead, please.
So apologies. Just to say that the first draft was available. I met with Councillor Follows when he was acting up as a portfolio holder for housing, and Councillor Williams in terms of because of the decarbonisation part of the agenda of the asset management strategy is so important. So we had quite a thorough meeting, and Paul gave us steers on certain areas. So actually the next draft is available, so it will be available for the next meeting. So apologies, I didn't mention it in my presentation.
Oh, that's all right, Hugh. Paul?
I think one of the things I would just point out as well is that one of the main features of it that we wanted to make clear was it's not just about decarbonisation, but it's also about recognising the rising cost of energy and the cost of living for tenants. And that needs to have at least as much weight in the thinking as why we're decarbonising homes and making them more efficient, is to make them cheaper for tenants too. So it's a bit of both, and the asset strategy recognises that equally now.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Any more comments on that? Well, early lunch then, everybody. Thank you all very much for your comments and for putting up with me. You always have the chance of asking Nick to do it next time, but he's much too busy, I think. No, I've enjoyed this, and I think this is in particular very relevant and very useful board to have. I'm glad it's here. Gets me out of planning as well, which I'm very pleased about too. So happy to bring this meeting to an end, other than to say Thursday, 24th of February at 10 a.m. here or by Zoom is the next meeting. Thank you all.